Hello, Shante. I just wanted to give you a quick video for class tomorrow. This week, we're going to be really looking at environmental aspects of public health. Um, so there's 6 chapters to go through. So that's going to be your assignment one, is to read these chapters and then go through them and give me a paragraph on each. We touch on several basic issues about the public health issues: clean air, clean water, uh, safe or hazardous wastes and waste in general, and food and drug, um, which is really a lot in the news these days, and the issue of population as an environmental issue. So read those chapters, and we'll and get started on that as well. The discussion this week is also related to environmental hazards, taking a look at exposure to environmental substances. So that's something to take a look at as well. And the second assignment this week is a link to the EPA and looking at particularly what kind of environmental issues are in this area. The uh, and looking at what's going on in your own community. This link should work, I think. At least it did the last time I taught this class. So please use that to look at the various environmental issues that are identified in your community. So these things are a part of what you'll be doing. So this week, I've seen that you've done a lot of the work over the weekend, and that's good. I think you still have assignment one of week 2 to do, or at least you did earlier today when I took a look at it. So that, in a nutshell, is what is going on. This is week 3. There will be the assessment. I will post this Zoom session in the week and also send you an email about that. So let's just look at a couple of issues about environmental health. Cleaning up the environment has done as much for general public welfare as anything else. Without a good environment, we have a problem, and that involves not just water and air, but remembering that water and air are not localized problems. They move from community to community, nation to nation, hemisphere to hemisphere. We already know that we can detect pollution in our air that originates in factories and power plants, coal-fired power plants in China. So the air is that way. Water flows across boundaries. It is not a respecter of boundaries. So we need to remember that that we have quite an issue with water. Colorado has always had issues with water. And clean water is a limited resource. I mean, if we look, there's a heck of a lot of water on our planet, but most of it is salt water. So finally, coming up with clean, fresh water is a major issue. And we do have a limited resource, and it's needed for important things like growing food crops. The more of it we use for doing things like watering golf courses, the less of it we have for important things. You can tell I'm not a golfer. Important things like food and drinking water. The other thing is we always run into this. What do we do with the garbage? Solid hazardous waste is one thing. Hazardous wastes are a special problem, but just our solid waste, landfills require, a setting, a place, and nobody wants one in their backyard. So what do we do with it? One solution, obviously, has been um, recycle as much as possible, but that requires that someone have the industries set up. And unfortunately, in many cases, the um, recycling is hampered by the fact that people don't want to spend the money to actually set up these recycling efforts. Living in Loveland, where we recycle a tremendous amount of material, that's one thing, but other communities are not near as aggressive about recycling as we are. Food and drugs are, obviously one of the things that set off much of the environmental movement was looking at cleaning up the food environment that we have, cleaning up not just how we raise our food animals, but how they're processed. An important um, issue that came about with multiple problems. This goes back quite a bit in our country. It actually goes back to something that happened in New York in the 1840s. The city was growing so fast that it was pushing farms out, and there was a milk shortage. Um, and fresh, we didn't have, this was pre-pasteurization, so the milk basically had to go from cow to table every single day in order to be potable. Well, they ran out. So the milk producers started diluting it. Well, you know what happens when you dilute milk. It has this bluish cast. It's pretty obvious that it has been diluted. So the producers of milk in New York City added something to it to make it look like it was indeed whole milk and not diluted. And unfortunately, what they chose to add was plaster of Paris. And over the course of a year or two, 6,000 babies died as a result of that. You can imagine plaster of Paris is not good for digestive tracts. And so we've had, and so there was a lot of controversy at the time, and New York passed some laws about processing of milk. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those producers didn't get strung up by vigilante mobs. But um, the whole process set that forth. Later on, cleaning up we started looking at drugs at the end of the 19th century, and in that, because we had many very much adulterated materials. A very popular remedy at the end of the 19th century was called Lydia Pinkham's um, elixir, and it was being sold as a cure for what was euphemistically called ladies' problems. Basically, it was a mix of alcohol and cocaine, and you can imagine that someone had a problem of any sort, taking a hit on this stuff, they felt pretty good. The problem is, of course, addiction and lots of other issues. So this led to the first of the Food and Drug laws, 1906, which basically started with a relatively toothless regulation for that made anything for drugs that were made could not be adulterated with poisonous substances. At the same time, along in that era, there was a lot of controversy about meatpacking plants. The quality of material that came out of meatpacking plants would make us all today very, very uh, unhappy. The material was filthy, had animal parts and hair and feces and everything else in this food. And so we started looking at food laws as well. And so that started off the whole process of creating rules about how food is packaged. These rules are broken regularly. We still hear about controversies about that. And then in the mid 30s, you probably remember from one of your classes here, I want to say Pharmacy 209 or maybe Pharmacy 200, the sulfanilamide mess, where sulfanilamide, in order to make it soluble and drinkable, was mixed with, unfortunately, what amounted to antifreeze, and a number of children and others died. So this led to the creation of the Food and Drug Administration. So we want to recognize that there is a lot going on that has led to these rules. This is all about public health, and so we want to have these things. And then finally, population. There's a lot of controversy about population. Do we have too much? Can we actually support as a planet the population that we have? So anyway, that's what we're doing this week. So I'd like you to get started on these things, and I'd like you to just send me a quick email, and in that email, code word Penang, PENANG, and just send that to me when you get finished listening to this. And I will see you Wednesday.